Welcome, Melina. It's so good to have you. Uh, we look forward to this conversation. And to get us started, would be great to get to know a little bit about you. Would you mind sharing a bit about your background and what inspires you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Melina. I went to high school in New Jersey, then attended Columbia for my undergrad, and then did two master's degrees at Harvard. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that might be helpful to anyone applying to colleges who are just interested in my journey. And regards to your question about what inspires me, I mean, there's a lot of things that inspires me. One is just learning new things. Also, my family inspires me, just exploring the world. I've been traveling a lot recently, so all of those things inspire me.
That's awesome. So you didn't do just one. You have done Columbia and Harvard. So we really would love to know more. Uh, but let's get started. When did you decide that your goal, your aim is an Ivy League college?
Yeah, I would say after ninth grade, when I was starting high school, I didn't exactly know how I was going to perform there because I was entering a very competitive high school. But after getting good grades in my freshman year, that gave me the confidence that I should try hard to aim for, an Ivy League or one of the top tier schools. But just keep in mind that even if you don't do well in your freshman year, colleges do value an upward trend. So I would say don't be too discouraged that you can't aim for an Ivy League if you don't do as well in your freshman year.
Got it. Got it. Uh, so just so that we have a better feel for your application journey, would you mind sharing how many colleges did you apply to and what was your yield?
Yeah, I applied to quite a few colleges. I applied to 17 colleges and got into 15.
That's incredible, Melina. That's almost 90% admit rate. Um, Perhaps you could share how did you select those 17 colleges, right? What was your criteria? What was the strategy? And then how did you settle on the 17?
Yeah, like I wouldn't say like there were like one strategy on how to select it, but I would say out of the 17 colleges, about one third of the colleges were reach schools, and then about one third were target schools, and then about one third were safety schools. And I think the number of those got added up because I would apply to a bunch of UC schools because they're all under one application. And when I say like 17, all of the UC schools were included in that number.
Got it. So you're counting UC each campus as a
Yeah, I'm
application?
gonna say yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, got it. Got it. So a third, a third, a third. That's a little different than what we have traditionally seen. So perhaps you could share more why 33% safety, Melina.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, I obviously had like reach schools that I really wanted to get into, but at the same time, I wanted schools that I knew I had a good chance of getting into because I feel like Ivy Leagues are not really a safety school for anyone. Even if you have a 4.0, I don't think you can really call them a safety school. And in terms of like figuring out what colleges are safety schools, I just try to look up the stats on the website. And if my stats sort of fell above 75 percentile, I think I considered it a safety school. I also discussed with my college counselor at my high school, who was very helpful. And then I also went on a few college tours to get an actual feel for each school, because stats is one thing, but you also want to kind of think about the culture and see if you fit in there.
Got it. No, that's a very important aspect, the culture. So how would you recommend applicants learn more about the college?
Yeah, there are many ways you can learn about it. I mean, a very easy way to start is just by looking at their website. But I also try to visit colleges that I was really interested in going to. I know it's hard to visit, to all the colleges, especially if you're far away. But yeah, I was fortunate to be able to make a trip to at least the East Coast schools. And then I attended the info session and went on the college campus tour, which was really helpful because it's led by the current student usually. And then you can just ask them questions casually. I mean, they're not like reviewing your applications or anything, so you don't have to be nervous when you're asking questions. You can just genuinely ask questions you want to get an answer for.
Got it. And Melina, just so that we understand, were you based? You said you went to high school in New Jersey?
Yeah, I went to high school in New Jersey.
Okay, got it. So East Coast was basically the focus area. Then how did you add UCs?
I mean, it's not, yeah, like I mostly went on college tours on the East Coast because they were like drivable, but it's not like I didn't want to go to college necessarily. I wasn't ruling out California or like other schools out in the West Coast. I was interested, but it was just difficult to fly out for
Yeah,
college campus tour for those schools. So I didn't get to like visit schools like, UC Berkeley and UCLA that I applied to, but in terms of college campus tours, it was just easy to go to East Coast schools.
got it, got it. So out of the 17, you clearly articulated the safety, the target, the reach segmentation. What about your strategy for early action versus early decision? Because that's certainly something that students struggle with.
Yeah, I mean, I think early action and early decision can be a good strategy for some, but not necessarily for everyone, because for students who have a really clear top choice college and are 100% certain about attending, if accepted, early decision could be a great option because it could potentially improve chances of acceptance. I personally applied to early action to Harvard because I wasn't really sure where like I had schools I was interested in, but I wasn't like 100% sure. So I didn't want to commit unless I know for sure. But early action can be a good option for students who want to receive admissions decisions earlier while keeping other options open. And I got deferred from Harvard and then later had to go through the whole regular cycle.
Got it, got it. Uh, the other aspect that, particularly when applying to Ivy Leagues and selective schools, is the recommendations become very important. So, how did you pick your recommenders? And what personality trait did you want them to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, recommendation letters can be, an important part of the application process. So I just try to think about what a couple of teachers that I had in mind. I remember asking like also one of my English teachers because I had her it twice. So I think it's also helpful like to think about how long you knew them because if you only knew them for like 2 months, then they probably just didn't get a chance to know you as well. Also like just consider like I think it is a good idea if they're teachers from your 11th grade junior year because you learn from them most recently, but it doesn't always mean they can't be your recommender if you took their class in freshman or sophomore year. So those are some things I considered, and I think when you ask for recommendation letters, just make sure that you ask ahead of time so that your recommenders can write you a thoughtful letter because they might have other students asking them to write the letter. And if there are any particular points that you want them to highlight, I think it's just good to set up a meeting or like send them an email or something, just pointing those things out. I mean, it's ultimately up to them what they write, but it's helpful. They have a lot of students. So that's what I did. And then I think I tried to provide them with like a rough draft of my essay. It was not like, it wasn't the final draft, but just so that they have an idea of what colleges you're applying to and what major you're applying to.
Got it. So there's an aspect, clearly there's recommendations, the essays, and we'll get to the essays and extracurricular in a bit. But there's also an aspect of SAT, GPA, class rank.
Mhm.
Uh, would you mind sharing your SAT score, GPA, class rank, so applicants can understand what it takes to get into these Ivy Leagues?
Yeah, I took the ACT instead of the SAT and scored 35 out of 36. And then I took 4 SAT 2s and I got 800 on math level 2, 800 on chemistry, 750 on literature, and then 740 on biology. And I had a 3.94 out of 4.0 unweighted GPA at the time. I was applying to colleges and my school didn't rank students.
Got it. So that's a pretty phenomenal score. 35 out of 36, and then 800, and then you said 3.9 for unweighted, right, Melina?
Yes, yes.
And where did you have IB or you had IB?
Yeah, I our school was AP, so I took AP
Okay.
courses. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And would you mind sharing just how many AP courses, and if you have any recommendations on how many, like if a school offers X, right? X being 10 or 12 or whatever be the case, what's your recommendation for someone who's aiming for elite schools to aim for as a percentage of those AP courses offered?
Yeah, I forgot the exact. I mean, I wasn't really like counting up. Like I guess when I was in high school, I wasn't trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna take 10 AP courses or like stuff like that. But my high school curriculum was sort of set up where in your junior year, it was all pretty much AP courses. But I so from junior and senior year, I think all my classes were AP, like including like U.S. history, Chinese, math, etc. But I did take some AP courses prior to junior year, and I think that was I took math pretty quickly. So I took BC calculus in my sophomore year, and then my high school also offered more like advanced courses like linear algebra and multi-calculus and so on. But I don't know if there's like one number that you need to follow, but just just try to take challenging courses and do as well as possible.
Yep. No, thank you. I mean, you had a really good ACT score, and obviously a lot of high schoolers are focused on ACT, SAT, particularly in their sophomore year or junior year. What tips would you offer these high schoolers as they prepare for ACT, SAT?
Yeah, I tried to study them over the summer. I didn't really study for the standardized test during the academic year too much because I wanted to focus on my GPA and extracurriculars. You can always retake your SAT or ACT, but once you get a letter grade on your transcript for your school courses, you can't change it. It's just there. So yeah, I try to study over the summer, especially the summer when I was a rising senior. But I mean, earlier you get it done is probably better just off your workload. And I took the ACT, and I think it doesn't matter whether you take the ACT or SAT. So maybe also look over the sections or do a practice test to see if you are slightly better in one or the other. For example, the ACT does have a science section, so if it might be a good option if you are strong in science.
Got it. And did I hear that right? Did you do it between after your junior year? You took your ACT after your senior year summer?
Yeah, I took it in senior fall.
Oh, wow. Okay, got it. Let's shift gear to extracurriculars.
Mhm.
You briefly referenced them. Uh, what was your strategy for extracurriculars? And then a second part to that, what should be the strategy for high schoolers now that you have gone through the whole application cycle? Because there are two schools of thought. One, pick a few, go deep.
Mhm.
Other, show a broad range of
Mhm.
competency by doing a number of extracurriculars.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is one correct answer to this. And personally, I just did extracurriculars I enjoyed. For example, I was on the squash team, and I always loved playing squash since I was in elementary school. And I also served as a president of my school's art club, and I've always liked art since I was probably in kindergarten. So I wouldn't say like try to force yourself to do extracurriculars you are not interested, but strive for a balance that show you are passionate about while gaining various experiences.
Got it. And then what aspect of experiences need to be leadership experiences? Right? Because that's an aspect that comes up quite often with high schoolers that they need to showcase their leadership skill.
Yeah, I guess it's not a must, but it is definitely helpful. And one of the skills that I think a lot of Ivy League schools or even other colleges value. So yeah, I did do a couple of leadership positions. Like as I mentioned before, I served as the president of the arts club in my school and also president of a club called Women in Leadership. I also volunteered as a summer camp counselor at a performing arts camp during the summer, was part of varsity squash team. And I also did like academic rep in one of the years, community service rep in one of the years. So yeah, I think all of those definitely helped in my application. It's hard to say like this played 30% or 50% or of the decision making because all the US colleges mostly do holistic review. So yeah, if there's extracurricular that you like, you enjoy, then I would say, why not? Like if you have the opportunity to serve as like some club president or do sports, I think there's some great ways to show leadership.
When you mentioned sports,
Hmm.
and there's an aspect of sports which is you enjoy a sport, you participate in, but there's an aspect of external validation, Melina, right? What would your recommendation be from an award collection point of view? Because I've spoken to a lot of high schoolers who feel a lot of pressure and stress that they are not ranked nationally, they're not ranked statewide. What's your recommendation and how do you approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think awards did play a role in my application because I did receive awards in my high school and awards from outside my school at both regional and national levels. But the importance of the awards can vary, a lot depending on the school, and they're just one portion of the holistic application. And I'd say, like, don't think of it as needing to collect as many awards as possible, but just, keep focusing on doing your best in your high school classes, participating in extracurricular activities, and I felt like the awards just naturally follow if you do well. And colleges will consider the whole picture, and I'm not so sure how much it will be helpful if you were to just collect random awards. But for example, if you have good grades in science and you earn the award related to that subject, then obviously that story makes sense, and I'm sure it would help create a whole narrative.
So awards that help with the narrative are more valuable than just collecting awards.
Yeah, I mean, if they're just random awards that you just try to get so that you can create a list of it, yeah, I'm not really quite sure how helpful that would be.
Got it. Got it. Pivoting to application essays, a topic that is the bane of existence for most of the seniors going through applications. So, how did you pick the topic for your application essay? Right, and it can be different. Obviously, it will be different for common and supplemental. Uh, and then, how did you approach writing them?
Yeah, so in terms of the topic for my application essay, I decided to write about this like science scholarship program that I was in because I was selected as a Hutchins Scholar, which is a science scholarship given to top science students in my high school to do research. And I had the opportunity to do research at a cancer research lab at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School during the summer after my junior year. So my application was centered around that experience. Like I talked about my hands-on experiences in the lab, like the complexities of cancer research, how I felt when I first started, how I felt at the end of the summer, and also like volunteer work I did while I was there with oncology patients. And then I try to also provide a glimpse of how this experience will tie into my future. So that was kind of what my topic was about. And in terms of like, I guess, how to approach, I know it can be daunting for many students and it's not easy to pick a topic, but I try to brainstorm towards the end of my summer after my junior year and worked on it throughout the fall. It wasn't like a quick process, but at the same time, it's not like I was working on the essay every day, the whole day or anything. So I just worked on it here and there when I had time in senior fall. And I would say just don't wait till the last minute to write them. Start early so you have time to brainstorm, draft, revise, and seek feedback. And when you're writing the first draft of your essay, don't focus too much on perfection, but rather focus on getting your ideas down. They don't have to be perfect sentences or anything. I think you're getting the actual idea is like the core part, and that's the hard part. And then after that, you can always ask for feedback. Like I went back to my college counselor and my English teacher just to get their feedback, but ultimately it's your essay. So how much you incorporate from their comments is up to you.
Got it. You mentioned a number of different things related to your essay topic. How did you arrive at what aspect of that activity you want to highlight in the essay? Right? Clearly, you did so many different things. You could have written about so many different things, but you chose a particular aspect. And how do you arrive at that, Melina?
Yeah, I mean, the topic itself, like, I mean, it could it doesn't have to be anything related to academics. It could be you could talk about your sports team or a volunteer trip you went on, or even a trip you went on for fun. But I think rather than listing out the qualities, like say like you don't want to be like, oh yes, I am strong in organization, time management. Like rather than saying it, I think you want to kind of tell the story through the experiences, kind of connect your experiences where lessons you learn through that, and like such as like some skills my colleges might like, or like critical thinking, time management, anything like that. That's great, but rather than saying like I have good time management skills, try to I guess show that through your experience with actual examples. And I think it's good if your examples are like vivid and like they can tell you, like it's a real experience and something valuable to you.
Got it. Got it. One of the high schoolers mentioned express, don't impress through
Mhm.
ethics. That's an interesting aspect. So, out of the 17 schools, did you get invited for interviews, Melina?
I did get an invite for a few, but not all. They were all alumni interviews where alumni in an area contact me to meet up for an interview. I didn't prepare too much for them, and I don't think you need to worry too much about it because they were pretty casual. I mostly just talked about what I was involved in at my high school. I didn't really get as many questions about academics. I think it was just more like hobbies or extracurriculars I was in. And yeah, it was just a pretty casual conversation. But I would say just try to do at least some basic research about the college you're interviewing for if you do get invited, like their values or programs you're applying to, just in case they ask, like, why are you interested in our school? And you don't want to sound like you don't know anything about their school. And also, it's your opportunity to ask questions about the school. So don't be afraid to ask anything you're curious about. They're usually an alum from the school, so they went to the school, they know the school, and always, just like any other interviews, show up on time. And even if you're not invited for the interviews, it does not mean you're disqualified. I had schools that I wasn't invited for interviews, but still got accepted.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for that. Uh, you mentioned a number of things that you did at high school,
Mhm.
including putting your applications together. And one of the things that we hear constantly from high schoolers is their ability to balance schoolwork, extracurricular activities, maintain a balance without burning out because a lot of stress they're going through. You have gone through this. What would you recommend? How should they approach it? Are there any, uh, is there any advice you would offer them?
Yeah, I think in order to sort of help out, not get too burnt out and maintain a balance, one thing I always did throughout high school and still today is I always get at least 7 hours of sleep each night. I think that really helped me feel not sleepy or drowsy during my classes. And I went to a boarding school where we had a lights out time. So I was kind of forced to sleep at a certain time, but I think this was actually helpful because it prevented me from staying up all night and struggling to focus the next day. So I would say like sleep definitely helped. And another aspect that helped was having a good support system was really helpful to me. I was so fortunate to have a strong support from my family and teachers, especially my mom. She was there for me every moment, listen to all my concerns, really helped me mentally. I mean, she wasn't like helping me out with the actual like academics or anything, but just having someone to talk to was really helpful for me. So I would say just try to have a good support system, whether it's your family, friends, advisors, coach, whoever.
And get sleep.
Yeah.
Uh, You applied to 17, you, you got admitted to most of them, but you did get rejected from couple.
Mhm.
Right? And I'm not, can you tell more about, was it early in the application season where you got your rejections? And how did you, I mean, clearly there were schools that you wanted to go to.
Mhm.
How did you handle rejection?
Yeah, so the school that I got rejected from, so as I mentioned earlier, I applied to early action to Harvard and then I got deferred. And then later in the regulars, when it got to the regular timing, they said no. So I would say that was the only college that I like really wanted to go to, but didn't get in. I mean, initially I was upset, but I got into my next top choice schools, which were Columbia and Penn. So thankfully, it wasn't that hard for me to handle that rejection. I decided to go to Columbia because the thought of being in New York City for the next 4 years was so exciting. And I got even more excited when I went to the Accepted Students Revisit Day on campus in the spring. So I would really recommend going to that if you have the opportunity to, because there might be schools that you initially wasn't interested in, but then you went and then you really love. And I think another reason why it wasn't too hard for me to handle it because everyone around me was so supportive. My parents were always supportive, but they never said I need to go to a certain school or get a certain job, and they never made me feel less valued if I didn't get into a certain school. So I think that helped as well.
Got it. What do you think the role of luck is in application process, Melina?
Yeah, I mean, luck can play a role in the admission process in varying degrees. For example, factors like how many applicants apply that year and external factors such as reputation of the high school you attend, all of those could impact the admission decisions. But I think it's important to focus on what you can control instead of worrying about factors like luck that are out of your control.
Got it. Now that you have gotten into, you have actually not just gotten in, you have attended two Ivy Leagues, right? You went to Columbia, you went to Harvard. Now looking back, what key traits and experiences do you think are valued by Ivy League schools or elite schools in general for
Yeah,
that?
I think in general, a lot of Ivy Leagues, like students who are intellectually curious, have leadership potentials, and commitment to community service, and also like academic excellence. Um, and but remember that a lot of the Ivy Leagues want to make a diverse and well-rounded class, but it doesn't mean that each applicant has to excel in every area. Like for example, while they value athletes who can, play in their sports team, it does not mean that like all the applicants who get accepted are an athlete. So just focus on areas that interest you, you are strong at, and just be yourself.
Uh, uh, your experiences at Harvard and Columbia. Tell us more. I mean, a lot of students know these schools from what they have read.
Mhm.
Some are fortunate enough to know who have been there. Would love to learn more from your experiences. And what did you enjoy the most during your time there?
Yeah, I could talk about both experiences. As I mentioned before, just so I clarify, like I went to Columbia for undergrad, did my bachelor's degree, and then Harvard for grad school, where I got my master's degrees. So it's hard to compare those two schools side by side because one was for undergrad and one was for grad school. But I can definitely share my experiences at both schools. So first, about Columbia, I love my 4 years there. New York City is a city I always dreamed of living in, and being in the city definitely gave me experiences that I don't think I would have had otherwise. It was really easy to do internships even during the academic year because it was located in New York City. And yeah, also got to visit so many like places like museums for free with the student ID, which I think all enriched my undergraduate experience beyond just the classes. And regarding the academics at Columbia, I attended Columbia College, which is arts and sciences, not the engineering school. And one aspect that's sort of unique to Columbia's academic is the core curriculum. It's a set of foundational courses that all undergraduates are required to take, regardless of your major. So I think, and some of these classes I would say were quite challenging with really heavy reading and writing. But overall, I think it was a curriculum that gave me exposure to various ideas, making me more of a well rounded person overall. And then now to talk a little bit about my experience at Harvard, I did two master's degrees there. One was in Master of Science in Bioethics at Harvard Medical School, and the other was Technology, Innovation, and Education at the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And I mean, the two programs were really different in terms of course requirements and style, but yeah, I really enjoyed both. I'm really grateful I got to experience two programs. I would say the bioethics program gave me a lot of exposure to healthcare with classes like Foundations of Bioethics, Clinical Ethics, Research Ethics, and the best part was the capstone experience where I got to actually apply what I learned in the classroom in a real world setting. But and we each had an assigned mentor, which was great. And then the other program I was in, Tech Innovation and Education, that program was a lot of fun because it was very flexible. I took a lot of classes related to educational technology, had a lot of project based classes. And yeah, like it was a flexible program. So I had room to take classes outside of that exact major. And by the way, the reason why I was able to do two master's program was because my work at the time had a great tuition reimbursement program. So I was working and doing my master's at the same time. And I know all my majors are unrelated and it might seem bizarre to some, but I've always just been that way. I've had various interests. I didn't always have like one favorite subject. And I think that's okay, even though if you only like one subject, that is fine too. Yeah, but I would say, yeah, overall, my undergrad experience helped me gain a broad, well rounded education and experience, and my master's degrees provided me more in depth knowledge about particular areas.
Got it. And Melina, what was your, you mentioned your master's, what was your undergrad major?
Yeah, so I majored in East Asian studies, and then my concentration was in visual arts. They call it concentration at Columbia, but it's essentially minor.
Got it. So we created Good Goblin to help college applicants, particularly go through this stressful time, right? What would love to hear your thoughts on Good Goblin, particularly as an applicant. If you were an applicant, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest benefits of Good Goblin would be receiving the personalized guidance through the advanced AI algorithm. I think that's helpful because each student is different. So some generic advice doesn't always apply to everyone. So personalized suggestions that cater to that individual's unique qualities and experiences, I think could be very beneficial. Another big benefit would be efficiency. I mean, I've gone through it and applying to colleges can be really stressful time with multiple applications and deadlines. So I think it can help students with college search and essay writing process be more efficient.
That's awesome. Melina, thank you so much for taking the time and talking with us. This was very helpful. We wish you the best.
No, thank you so much for having me today.